welcome back to Getaway Day. As always, I am Mason, he is Gautam, and today we are here to talk about what's the one with the stick and the ball?
Cricket.
Throw the ball, you hit it with the stick.
Volleyball.
Cricket?
Golf.
Cricket. We're here to talk about cricket. So my favorite bowler is that guy who was with is it New Zealand? You remember the guy I'm talking about?
No, I don't.
Really? When we were watching that test match?
Yeah, I don't remember.
Fine. Okay. Well, anyway, we're here to talk about some baseball. And not just any baseball, some of the best players in baseball, some of the best in their particular categories, their types, their styles. We're going to talk about some of the best, and we may talk about some really bad guys too. Who's to say? Just for funsies. So we're now 30 games into the season? Is that right?
Yeah.
So about 20% ish. Still kind of small samples, but we're getting bigger and bigger samples every week. So I think this could be a fun conversation to see kind of how different guys are doing, kind of how the league as a whole is doing. Which I know you were sending me and Matthew some messages the other day about just looking at April to April from last year to this year in the triple slash for the league. And I kind of want to start there. Like, what is do you have those numbers handy, or do you remember?
Yeah. So I'll pull them up, but basically the big thing is that all offense is kind of down across the board compared to 2023. Last year, it kind of had jumped back up compared to 2022 when there was sticky stuff going on. There was dead balls going on. I mean, 2023 seemed like a jump back to where the league kind of wanted things to be. Now 2024, it seems like we've gone back to kind of a point where we are at 247, 3. So this is last April, 247, 321, 405. In 2024, April was 240, 315, 384. So slugging's down, OBP is down, and batting average is down. So
was it about 10 points each?
Roughly, yeah.
Yeah. So, but that's the league as a whole. But there are individuals who are saying, screw that trend. I'm not here for it. And they're kind of going the other way, it seems. Some guys that are just having absolutely bonkers first months of the season. And some of the best best stats to look at for that are some of the things we're going to go through here over this episode. But I do think we should probably mention that pretty much every single list, number 1, 2, or 3, his name is Mookie Betts. So he's just having like the best start of his career, I think. Like, he's had some great starts to seasons in his career, but this one's ridiculous. Like 377, 481, 623, leading the league in average, OBP, in second in slug by 0.001. So essentially leading every category of the triple slash with 6 home runs, 8 steals, more like 50% more walks than strikeouts. Like, the dude's just nuts. He's put up 3 WAR already. So he'll probably end up coming up in a lot of these. But the cool thing is, depending on what stat you're looking at, you tend to get entirely different groupings of players too. So I wanted to mention him because he's pretty much there at the top of everything. And then everyone else seems to be different depending on the stat.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll comment on Mookie. Like, we were just looking and trying to poke some holes in what he's doing, and you can look at the high BABIP, which is 398. that's propping up his batting average to 377. That'll probably come down. Like, we understand that, but other than that, there's not a whole lot that you can look at that the guy's doing wrong right now. He's crushing the ball. He's hitting lots of line drives. He's stealing bases, taking lots of walks. I mean, the OBP is 481. He's reaching base almost half his times up to the plate, and that helps him to lead the league in runs.
And he's been up to
um,
the plate 156 times,
yeah,
which, if I'm not mistaken, leads the league.
that would make sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
in that Dodgers lineup and having played the extra couple games.
Yeah. But yeah, basically Mookie Betts is playing at a Barry Bonds level right now. So we should all celebrate him. I think he's going to be a runaway MVP. Gautam said, well, hold up. There's a lot of guys, including Ohtani, who are pretty close to him in a lot of categories. But let me dream, okay?
Yeah, baseball always finds a way. I mean, last year we thought Acuna was running away with the MVP. Then Betts caught him for a while, and it looked like it was neck and neck. And then it kind of became a runaway again. So we really don't know what's going to happen. And the one caution about what we're talking about, you mentioned we're still talking small samples. If you remember, Matt Chapman last year had an incredible month of April, and then he just was really bad for 5 months of the year, and he's kind of carried on what he was doing the last 5 months last year. So
Yeah, but Mookie isn't
with
Matt Chapman.
no, he's not. I'm not saying he is. I'm just saying for this whole conversation, some of the guys we talk about are not going to sustain it, and that's just the nature of of April baseball and what happens in this league.
Yeah. So what do you say we start talking about some of these different stats that you and I are interested in, and talking about some of the guys that we completely expect and some of the guys that maybe surprise us in these categories?
Yeah,
All right. So first up, I kind of want to talk about batting average. It's like the easiest to understand stat for anybody who watches baseball. Um, but it's not really as valuable anymore as a lot of other stats, but it's still a good first spot to look. So the top 10 here for batting average: Mookie Betts, Alec Boehm, Stephen Kwan, Salvador Perez, Will Smith, William Contreras, Jurickson Profar, Jose Altuve, Shohei Ohtani, and Trey Bay Turner. So any of those guys stand out to you?
yeah. I'll take a whole group. I like the three catchers right in the middle: Perez, Will Smith, William Contreras. Will Smith, that doesn't really surprise me. He's a guy that always usually does pretty well in the batting average category. Um, William Contreras, I think I may have been too low on this guy. Like, he looks like he's a superstar catcher, and I was, defending his brother Wilson and saying Wilson's still the better player and everything. Wilson's still a good player. He's having actually a very fine start to the year himself, but William looks like he's an elite hitter, not just for a catcher. Like, the guy's insane what he's been doing this year, and he's building upon the full season he had last year in Milwaukee, and looks like
And even the
just a
partial season
stud.
he had the year before that in Atlanta, he was
It's
really
all been
good.
good. He's
Yeah.
never not been good as a big leaguer, and he's been getting better and better. It feels.
Yeah. The guy who kind of surprises me the most here is definitely Salvador Perez.
Right.
Because Salvador Perez, his career high in batting average outside of the 2020 season was, I believe, 270 something.
I think he had a 290 in there somewhere, but it was years ago.
Oh, back in like his 2012, 2013 era.
Yeah.
Yeah, 292 in 138 games in 2013. But then since then, like 273 is the highest full season average that he's had. And that was in his 48 home run season. So like great season for Salvador Perez there, but 355 is insane for him. And his BABIP is pretty high right now as well, up at 350, 356. So like there's definitely a little bit of luck involved there. But like I don't know, this is weird. It's almost like has he changed his approach? Is it a different swing? What's going on with Salvi? Why is he all of a sudden back on the upswing? It's like after
the freaky thing is the strikeout rate. Basically, about 5 or 6 years ago, ever since then, his strikeout rate, or even before then, his strikeout rate just like ticking up, and he became pretty one dimensional as a player because he's not like a guy that walks a lot. He was just going up there and trying to hit the ball 500 feet. And he was actually pretty successful at that. He's always had power throughout his career, but the strikeout rate was getting worse and worse, and that was kind of showing up in bad batting averages. And this year, he freakishly has a 10.7% strikeout rate. So, like, how do you do that? That's basically like what Ronald Acuna did from 2022 to 2023, where he just cut his strikeout rate in half. I don't know. I have no words for this.
Should we expect Sal to steal 70 bases?
Let's count on it.
All right, perfect. Are there any guys that surprised you that aren't here? Because there's one notable one to me.
Probably Luis Ariz, right?
Yeah, Luis Ariz at 295. He had
but it's not like he's so far
rough start to the season, and he's definitely turned it on since then. Like it was the first 2 weeks. I think he was like just not really hitting yet, and then he's turned it on since, and he's climbing that board. So I don't think it's too long before he's up at the top.
Yeah,
but it's just
again with him, it's a fairly empty batting average because there's little to no power to speak of. He doesn't really do a whole lot else well other than get base hits. So
yeah,
if he's not doing that,
he's only walked 5% of the time, no home runs, only driven in 5 guys, hasn't stolen a base. Like there's nothing but batting average for him.
Yeah, so then even like a 295 is not super impressive. Like it's got to be better for him. And it probably will be, but
yeah, it will be. But is it going to be up at like 340, 350?
Highly doubt it.
Where it becomes somewhat useful again.
Actually, speaking of that, so like the other guy I'll mention before we go on to something else, Stephen Kwan, who was America's favorite leadoff man named Stephen Kwan in 2022. And then
that's a pretty big caveat there, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's still true.
Yeah, who else was going to be the favorite named Stephen Kwan?
Hey. No, but Stephen Kwan was like a great player in 22. And then with these contact first guys, he sort of like did exactly the same stuff, but his batting average wasn't so good. And that's the thing about batting average. It's a fickle statistic that can be just thrown off like very easily. It's not something that's consistent very often. And Kwan's once again doing what he normally does, but this time it's working out for him and he's hitting 360. So
well, and this time it's coming with a little bit of power. So he's got 3 home runs already. He's got a 512 slug, so he's hitting doubles. He's getting some, I think he's got a couple triples. Like he's doing damage with it. Whereas Ariz is not. Ariz is slow. It's all singles. Kwan, with this high batting average, is able to do damage.
Yeah. Kwan's definitely my favorite of those two guys, even though they're kind of similar player types, but Kwan's just so much more exciting because he's a great defender. He steals bases, and Ariz, he doesn't do that.
Yeah. All right, what do you say we go on to something a little bit different?
Sure.
We're going to go over to isolated power, which is slugging percentage minus your batting average. So it's essentially just a quick and dirty way of measuring like the value of your power. So like, I guess maybe the best way to describe this is Luis Arise, with his 295 batting average, only has an 068 ISO. So basically, he's doing no damage, not getting any extra base hits, nothing of that sort. But the Major League ISO leader right now, through 30 games, Gunnar Henderson with a 322. So Gunnar is doing a ton of damage. And ISO is definitely influenced by home runs. The more bases that you're going to get, the higher your slug's going to be, the higher your ISO is going to be. So it kind of goes hand in hand with some of the home run leaderboards, but guys that get a lot of triples, a lot of doubles, they can also be pretty high up here too, right?
Yeah, for sure. And you always see this like with some minor leaguers. Uh, you might look at like a minor league ISO leaderboard and you see some guys you haven't heard of, and those are like the burners that will get a lot of doubles and triples in big AAA ballparks that don't really have real like home run power, but they're reaching extra base hits just because they're fast.
Yeah. And I so the top 10 here has got some kind of fun names to me. So
Yeah.
Gunnar Henderson leading it off, Mike Trout, CJ Abrams at 3, Marcelo Zuna, Ellie De La Cruz, Adolis Garcia, Shohei Ohtani, Kyle Tucker, Eddie Julian, and Riley Green to round it out. Like a lot of youngsters in here. Every single guy in the top 10 has at least 7 home runs. So lots of guys that have shown some early power here. Some of the guys that surprised me a little bit, CJ Abrams.
Yeah.
Third highest ISO. He has 7 home runs. So out of the top 10, he has the lowest number of home runs. But the dude is fast. So he's definitely taking advantage of some of those opportunities to go get 2, get 3 bags. And seeing him right behind Trout and Henderson, that's pretty darn good company.
Yeah, we talked about him last week though. There's real power gains. It's not like he's just doing it on like being fast.
Well, so, yeah, 7 home runs through the first calendar month is fantastic.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I said, you don't get below 7 home runs until you get down to number 12. So, and even then, like the first guy that's in this list that I would consider not a power guy.
Oh, it's hard to call any of these guys not a power guy.
Well, not like a stereotypical in your head. You're gonna think a big masher.
Yeah. Who is that?
I was gonna say Shea Langoliers, but that actually kind of is his.
That's all
profile.
Right? Yeah. I would say Naylor is surprising on this list. He's at 11th. He's not ever showed this type of power as a major leaguer. He's always been a contact first guy, and this year he's been awesome with just crushing it. I don't know.
That's true. That's true.
The guy I wanted to talk about, one of the guys I want to talk about is Riley Green, who is having his breakout. I think this is a cool one because while Torkelson seems like he's taking a step back, Riley Green is finally here. We forget that this guy was top 3 prospect when he was about to debut.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen it in spurts, I think. This year, he's a totally different player. He's walking a lot.
Not just walking a lot. He's walking a ridiculous amount. It's 17.3% of the time.
Yeah. So,
like, he doesn't have a low strikeout rate, but his walk rate almost matches it.
Yeah. So he's being patient, but he's also doing a lot of damage with his batted balls, and I'm not surprised about this one. I think this one was just a matter of time that Riley Green, a guy that was like regarded as such a good pure hitter, he was going to find a way to make it work, and he has now. I'm excited.
Yeah. The guy that I'm looking in here that actually is the weirdest to me is Eddie Julian. Because Eddie Julian actually has one of the lowest or he has an under 500 slug, which means to have a 272 ISO, he's pairing it with a 216 batting average. And not exactly something you would look at and go, this guy is good. He's playing really well. But he has 7 home runs. Like he's done some damage when he has made contact, which kind of leads me to believe that as he starts getting a little bit more luck on some of the batted balls, he may end up a little bit better than he is now.
I legitimately think Edouard Julien is one of the weirdest players in the league. He has this approach where he's trying to hit, he's a left-handed hitter. He's trying to hit everything to the opposite field. And he always hits fly balls. So I don't think that batting average is going to actually get better. I think this is like the player that he is. He's going to get on base a lot because he walks. And then he somehow reaches power by going to the opposite field, which is not the typical way that people do it. So he's making it work. It's a very odd profile, but I don't know. It's productive for sure.
Yeah. And he's managed to drive in 12 runs for the Twins so far. So like he's being one of their productive offensive players. Not exactly one of the highest RBI guys in the league, but 12 isn't exactly a low number either at this point in the season. So, all right. What do you say we go talk about those burners that we were talking about earlier?
Yeah.
The stolen base guys. Go ahead, break it down for us.
All right. So let me get the list up if I can find it. So we got Ellie De La Cruz, Bryce Terang, Ronald Acuna, Lane Thomas, Trey Turner, Jose Caballero, Jaron Duran, Bobby Witt, Mookie Betts, and Michael Garcia. So this list is, some of the typical guys. We have some new faces also on this list. And we got one guy that's like trying to steal 100 bases this year, and his name is Ellie De La Cruz, who has 18 to this point in the season in just 107 at bats. That's remarkable. Is he going to steal 100 bases? Is it possible?
If he stays healthy, yes, it's entirely possible. In fact, if he stays healthy, the rate he's going, I'm going to say it's probable. Like Ronald stole 70 last year, and we thought that was weird. But then look at the minor leagues. Like Victor Scott had 94 last year. Like there's guys that are going to get close. And Ellie is one of the fastest players in the league. He's a lot faster than Ronald, like as far as pure speed. So, I mean, I would not be surprised to see him get 80, 90, 100 stolen bases this year if he can continue to get on base, which that's kind of the big question with him is he's a 30% strikeout guy. So is he going to be going to continue to get on base, or is he going to end up starting to strike out more, going like a stretch where he's just really not hitting, which he hasn't had yet this year. But last year he did have a couple of stretches that were just not good. So if he can stay consistently hitting, yes, he will get 100 stolen bases.
So to be on this list, there's two things really that come into play. And, each player has different, you could call them factors for these two things. One is your speed, are you fast? And I think most of the guys on this list are pretty fast. But the second part about it is the willingness to actually run. And with guys like Ellie, he obviously has both of those things in spades.
Yeah.
With a guy like Ronald, it's kind of impressive because if I'm not mistaken, he's a guy whose like sprint speed has dropped quite a bit, but he obviously still wants to be stealing tons of bases. Why he's showing up high on this list with 13 this year. He's also a very good base runner. So we've seen like slow guys do well in stolen bases because they know exactly how to pick their spots and get the right jumps and stuff. That's a lot of it too. So it's not just like raw speed.
And a guy, he's not slow, but he's kind of in the realm of what you were just saying with Ronald is Mookie Betts. Like Mookie Betts at 33 years old is not as fast as he was when he first came into the league. Like, he's definitely slowed down sprint speed wise. He already wasn't like a 99th percentile speed guy, but he's out there and he's got 8 stolen bases already. And he's probably going to end up with 40 or so at the end of the season. Like,
I'll be surprised if he does.
if he has 40, you'd be surprised?
I'd be very surprised because that seemed like the part of his game that had really died off. Because last year, he stole like 10, maybe less than 10. Something
Yeah,
like
but I mean,
that.
he's already at 8. Like, he's already
Yeah,
got one heck of a
that's the
start.
thing. That's the thing. People can start and stop just as easily stealing bases. That's
True.
something that just like goes away randomly. It's not something that you can pace out necessarily.
True. Although you're probably going to take more chances with leads. And this is a Dodgers team that can put together a pretty big lead pretty quickly. And so the situation will be there to give him more stolen bases. It's just whether he takes it.
Yeah.
Any other fun guys? I think a guy that doesn't really get a whole lot of attention is the guy who's second to only Ellie, and that's Bryce Terang.
Yeah.
Like, he's had a great start to the season so far. On any part of his game. Like, the dude doesn't strike out, high contact guy, 309 average, 14 stolen bases, a couple home runs. Like, he's having a really, really good start to the season.
Mm-hmm.
And he's one of those guys that, like, until right now, I had no idea. And he's in my division.
I mentioned that to you last week when
I probably wasn't paying attention.
Striking out and falling over against Jared Jones.
Oh yeah.
And then you were like, "Oh, it's just Bryce Terang," and I said he's having a great season, and now you know why. Like, but yeah, no. Big props to him for making the improvements that he needed to, because as an offensive player, it wasn't there last year. He was like 40% worse than average. But he does stuff well, obviously, like run the bases and play his position and stuff. So Brewers kept putting him out there, and this year they're looking good for it because he's hitting as well.
What do you think about Lane Thomas still being fourth on the list with over 10, even though he's been on the IL for like 2 weeks now, week and a half?
Yeah, so that's the scary part about these guys. They just inherently have a higher risk of getting injured. Lane Thomas hurt his knee sliding into the base. So, yeah, it's the Nationals were just running wild. They were just pretty much getting on base and running with any guy that has the ability to do it. And Lane Thomas really wanted to steal bases, and that's kind of interesting that he had a 184 batting average, yet he still had 11 steals.
Yeah.
So, not like he was on base a whole lot.
Yeah. It's wild to me, but what are you going to do?
What are you going to do?
What are you going to do? Let's talk about some pitchers, though, because we've talked about some hitters for a while now. So I know ERA, we've got some interesting guys here in the ERA leaderboard for the first month of the season. And it all starts with the Japanese rookie for the Chicago Cubs, Shota Imanaga, with a .78 ERA through 34 2/3 innings. Behind him, Ranger Suarez at 132. He's almost twice Shota's ERA right now. Jose Barrios, Reynaldo Lopez, Cutter Crawford, Jordan Hicks, Seth Lugo, Tanner Houck, Ronel Blanco, and Spencer Turnbull.
If you told me this was the bottom 10 in ERA, I would believe you. If you told me like that before the beginning of the season, I'd be like, oh, these guys are all bad.
I would be surprised if Jose Barrios were at the bottom of the league.
Yeah, but like if you gave me that whole list, I wouldn't have been surprised. You know?
Yeah, it's like one rough month. One rough month for a good guy, and then the rest of them, it makes sense. But yeah, all 10 of those guys have a 167 or better ERA. And then we've got another three guys that are still under a 2 after that. Like, we're having some really, really low scoring games here early in the season, is basically what this is telling me.
Yeah, and that plays into what we talked about at the top with the reduced slash line because pitchers got to succeed if the hitters are not. And Shota, Shota has been amazing for the Cubs. He's like single handedly keeping them afloat as every other pitcher in the rotation has been injured. They've won all the games that he's pitched. Um, he's pitched fairly deep into games. I mean, he hasn't done a thing wrong, and he's just been a joy to watch because of his fielding ability. He's really good. Gets off the mound like super well. Fields his position. Um, Amazing fastball that kind of he locates so well at the top of the zone and very difficult to pick up on when he mixes in the splitter and um, just his passion for pitching and competing. He really shows it, and it's been super cool. And like, do I think he's gonna have a .78 ERA going forward? No, but we got to enjoy it. It's pretty cool, especially considering that he has no experience in Major League Baseball and his first 6 starts, .78 ERA. You can't do much better than that.
Isn't he a lefty that relies a lot on a splitter?
Splitter and fastball.
Because I was reading something earlier that like there's not many lefties that use a splitter. Like, he's
That's
kind of
correct.
the
Yeah.
first, which I think that might be part of it. Is people are seeing a pitch coming from a spot where they don't recognize it at all, which is a great thing for him.
Yeah.
So, uh, so if there was one guy out of this entire top 10 that you think is most likely to kind of blow up that ERA before even midseason or the end of this next month, who do you think it is? Because I've got my guy.
I have a lot of guys that I feel like are not this guy, unfortunately. Like, but that's just anybody, right? Anybody who has a ERA under 2 is most likely gonna face some challenges going
Yeah,
forward.
but like there's some guys that I think will finish around 3-1, but then there's other guys that I think are going to finish the season probably around a 4 or 4-5.
That's fair. Yeah. I
And
think
like the guy for me is Seth Lugo. Like, Seth Lugo does not strike anybody out. He relies a lot on the ground ball, and he's had a fantastic defense behind him so far. And so that's been a huge part of his game and keeping him down to a 1.6 ERA. But like, even just look at his FIP right now, fielder independent pitching, which maybe not the truest stat in the world because it's making a lot of assumptions, but it's up at a 3.43. Like, so there's a pretty substantial difference there. And then look at his expected ERA versus his ERA. His expected is a 4.12. So like, there's definitely some luck in there for Seth Lugo, and with the low strikeouts, the high walks, like, I don't expect him to be there that long. I mean, his pitcher's BABIP is 225. So he's getting a lot of luck. So he's kind of my guy that I think is most likely to fall out.
yeah, kind of along the same lines. I'm gonna pick Ranger Suarez, even though he's been on some insane run recently. He's it's kind of he's kind of doing what he did in 2021, where he had a 136 ERA. He's doing that again, which is cool. But I also don't see what the difference between this Ranger Suarez and the one we saw like 2022 and 2023. He's more like a high threes, like low fours ERA. The kind of anomaly of his whole career, and it's been like a bugaboo for Ranger Suarez, has been his walk rate. He walked a lot of guys. It was like 3.46 walks per 9 in 2023. This year it's down to a career low 1.1. So that's something that probably going to regress a little bit. If he keeps that up, then he's got all the makings of like an awesome Logan Webb type, where he gets lots of ground balls and limits the hard contact, doesn't give up homers and stuff. So I like Rangers Suarez. I think what he's doing is really cool. Hope he keeps it up. But for a guy that's had that many walk problems, I just think it's going to come back to bite him probably.
Yeah. Um, I'm trying to click to the next thing on my screen, but my computer seems to be slightly frozen.
Uh oh.
So might get a little awkward.
Where are we going next?
Stuff Plus.
Stuff Plus. Okay.
So
So
you should give a little bit of a background as to what Stuff Plus actually means.
yeah, that's what I was just set up to do. So Stuff Plus is a model based approach created by Eno Saris that looks at the characteristics of individual pitches. So, like horizontal break, velocity, and release point, and it factors in all kinds of stuff like handedness, handedness splits, and all different characteristics of the individual pitches, and basically it's on its own scale, so it doesn't like link up with ERA or FIP or anything like that. It's just like on a scale of 0 to whatever. I don't know what it goes up to, but basically it's you can use it relatively compared to other pitchers to see what their overall stuff in parentheses or quotes um, is, and kind of when you look at the top stuff guys, you see guys you would expect, like Corbin Burns. I'll just read this top 10. Jared Jones is number one, Hunter Green, Logan Gilbert, Dylan Cease, Corbin Burns, Tyler Glasnow, uh, Jordan Hicks, Grayson Rodriguez, Mackenzie Gore, Ryan Pepio. So got some familiar names, some of the aces around the league, but also some unusual names and some young guys that are new to starting too. So where do you want to start with this list?
So I obviously can't pull it up myself, so I'm going to have to ask you some numbers here. But the guy that kind of stands out to me, just because he's a starter for the first time, is Jordan Hicks. Like thinking back to his career, or like with the Cardinals in the bullpen, like the dude has what you would consider some of the nastiest stuff. Period. Like 104-mile-an-hour wipeout sinker. Like that's pretty wild. A 98-mile-an-hour slider. It's pretty impressive. But what's his stuff plus?
Yeah, so Jordan Hicks' stuff plus is 119 overall. Uh, it doesn't like his fastball. That's down at an 89, but it likes all his secondary pitches, like the slider 110, the sinker 135, and the slider 134.
And that makes a lot of sense to me, especially knowing kind of how he's pitched in the past. Like his most effective pitches were always that sinker slider combo. Throw a sinker, throw a slider outside in that same spot or that same quadrant of the zone. You'll get guys. He's not a big strikeout guy, which is weird for a guy that threw 104 in the bullpen. But you can induce some really, really bad contact that goes straight to the first baseman. So makes a lot of sense. It's kind of cool to see him up there with the starting pitchers because that is not something I expected. I kind of expected.
He was on that ERA list too, so it's backed up by this other model, which is kind of cool. And we got to take the L at least in the early going on Jordan Hicks as a starter because it's been a like massive success to this point so far.
Yeah.
Number one on the list, Jared Jones. That's crazy that a guy just comes into the league and he's immediately the best in any pitching category with
and his worst pitch according to Stuff Plus is a cutter at 101.
Yeah.
So he still has a really good cutter. But yeah.
But the other pitchers are just out of this world. Like Is the Spencer Strider comp that crazy? He's a guy that would have probably been tops of this list. And when you're just comparing raw stuff, I'm not saying that Jared Jones is Spencer Strider yet, but he has all the tools to become that guy with a
So
fastball that's 144, slider 131, changeup 134. These are like elite best pitches in the league.
so I'm gonna read you Spencer Strider's stuff plus on those same pitches from last year.
Yeah.
Because I think we can all agree Spencer Strider was amazing last year, right?
Yep.
Okay. Fastball, 141. Pretty similar. Slider, 105. Changeup, 85. So
Yeah.
technically, Jared Jones is better than Spencer Strider as far as his stuff is concerned.
Right. And that's I guess like the thing that is not super clear is how do these actually translate? How do stuff numbers translate to real life production? The stats that we know, and we don't really know the answer to that, but we can
It's
look at the top 10 type lists and we can see all these guys have good stuff and it passes like a sanity check. It passes the smell test.
Yeah, it's a lot more qualitative than anything. Like basically, you see these numbers, and then you just look at how tough of a time guys have hitting those guys. Like, are people able to get solid contact fairly regularly on this guy's fastball? If not, it's probably high on the stuff plus, and also that tends to lead to results. Like bad contact leads to ground balls to the second baseman, which leads to an out. So like there's no direct correlation, but you can kind of see you're not going to have a guy who has ridiculous stuff on all of his pitches and good location plus. That's also a key. You have to have stuff and you have to be able to put stuff where it is like helpful. So like there's also location plus and pitching plus like numbers that they get from this model as well. But the guys who can actually put their pitches where they want them and they have nasty stuff are going to be some of the best pitchers in the league. And that's kind of what this model is showing. So seeing this model for the guys so far this year just kind of shows you some of these dudes who maybe aren't getting enough love. Like the fact that Brandon Pfaadt is in here kind of surprises me because he only has one plus pitch, which is something that it's a slider at 133.
What number is he on the list? I can't even find him.
Oh shoot, it sorted by something else. My bad. I don't know what it sorted by. I got it back up. Never mind. Mackenzie Gore. Let's go with that one because Mackenzie Gore is basically the same as what I was about to say.
He's got a great fastball, but he's got not very good secondaries, and he's riding on that because he's actually had a pretty good start to the season.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, whereas Brandon Pfaadt has a really good slider and not very good at anything else, but he's not that very high up.
Another one that's just kind of standing out to me, and I've been super frustrated about this guy because of fantasy, but Joe Musgrove has like some of the worst numbers I've ever seen. Like his sinker is like a 51, and his fastball is an 86, and his cutter is a 96. Meanwhile, all his like breaking ball stuff is amazing, out of this world good. With his, why do I keep losing him?
His slider, curveball, and changeup, all being at 139. Oh, sorry, that's Rodon. 145, 139, 136.
Yeah, so it's a very interesting profile where the stuff that usually sets up those breaking balls and stuff are not doing what they need to do,
and that
but
doesn't really
it doesn't work.
Yeah, it's like you have to have a setup pitch for that breaking stuff, or no one's going to swing at the breaking stuff.
Yeah, no matter how good it is.
Yeah, they'll let it be outside the zone. Then they'll just take their walks. So, unless you can somehow paint the corners with it like Greg Maddux, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say Joe Musgrove is not Greg Maddux.
Hey.
He's good. He's just not Greg Maddux. He throws harder.
Fine.
By a lot. Maddux threw what, 62 on his fastball?
I feel like Greg Maddux threw like mid-90s.
He threw like 91.
Which was not that slow for his time.
No, but that was like his top end. He was like between 88 and 91. He was kind of Kyle Hendricks is what he was.
Yeah.
Kyle Hendricks pitching 25 years ago would have been one of the best pitchers ever.
Yeah.
But that's an aside.
That's an interesting one. I'll have to think about that.
About Kyle Hendricks being Greg Maddux?
Yeah, no, just like how he would have maybe been even better in that era. I don't know.
All right. Anything else you want to talk about? Do we want to talk about any of the worst guys in some of these? I actually do want to point out the worst guy in Stuff Plus, a guy that I very much not really liked and not been very high on for years and years and years. Martin Perez has the worst.
I just like realized there's probably some bug in this Stuff Plus equation, or they must hate lefties. Because if you look at the top of the list, Martin Perez, Logan Allen, Austin Gomber, Bailey Falter, Patrick Corbin, Jose Quintana, all left-handed pitchers.
Oh.
Weird, right?
Yeah. It is weird.
Oh my God, Ranger Suarez is bottom 10 in Stuff Plus.
His only good pitch apparently is his cutter.
Yet he's number 2 in ERA this year. Interesting.
He has worse stuff than Dakota Hudson.
That's saying a lot.
Yeah.
Huh.
There's a couple guys down this low that surprised me.
I'm not surprised, honestly, by this list.
Joe Ryan, Zach Gallen, those guys being that low is weird to me.
Surprised, yeah.
Now, if you were to tell me Cal Quantrill was down here, I'd be like, yeah, checks out.
Huh, interesting stuff.
Okay, Fott was he's 54 if we're going from worst. Brandon Fott was number 31, by the way. So that was just me not knowing how to sort things on a screen.
Yeah, so go have some fun with Stuff Plus. You can find it on Fangraphs under player stats and pitch modeling. You can sort by all the different pitches, Stuff Plus, Location Plus, Pitching Plus. Pretty cool.
It's a fun stat. Or fun model. It's not a stat. You can definitely make some arguments based on it that are not backed by much, but it's also kind of fun.
Yeah, it's fun to learn something new and just get a sense for like where people are and find some surprises. Like, how is Ranger Suarez so low on this thing, but he's doing so well? Clearly, that's like a limitation of the model.
Yeah. So let us know what guys surprise you in the stats you care about. Maybe you care about walk percentage. Who surprises you there? Who surprises you in, I don't know, give me a random pitching stat, like a completely off the wall pitching stat.
Ex-Woba.
Yeah. Who surprises you in the ex-Woba leaderboards? So let us know, and I'm curious. So that is all we have for you for this episode of Getaway Day. We will see you guys back here on Thursday, This Week in Baseball. If you enjoy the podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcasting app or YouTube to make sure you don't miss any future episodes. Join the conversation on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Getaway Day Pod. If you enjoy card collecting, check out our sister YouTube channel at Getaway Day Cards.